listening to The Betmaker Show. This is the NFL post-draft NFC East team season betting odds preview for Monday, April 29th, 2019. And now, live from Las Vegas, the host of The Betmaker Show, Brian Blessing.
All right, folks, here we go on the Betmaker.com Sportsbook Report. Coming to you from Las Vegas, it's Brian Blessing, and really excited to be alongside here talking about the NFL. We're going to have previews for each division all year long. We're going to start with the NFC East, and we've got a great stable of guests. And our go-to guy is going to be Jack from Bookmaker.eu. He is their head NFL odds maker. Also, our good friend Bruce Marshall from the Gold Sheet here in Las Vegas is going to chime in. So we'll have you covered on both sides of the counter. So let's not waste any time. We're going to start on the NFC East, and we bring Jack from Bookmaker.eu. And hello, Jack. How you doing?
Good, Brian. How are you?
Outstanding, sir. It's fun to start talking about the 800-pound gorilla. That's the NFL, and we've got free agency and the draft behind us. So we're focused on the NFC East, and we wanted to focus on season win totals for each team. Why don't I just ask you for an overview of the division from last year, with Dallas winning that division with a record of 10-6. But the crazy thing, and I'd be very curious from an odds maker's perspective about the NFC East, there has never been a repeat champion in the NFC East going all the way back to 2004. How much has that impacted season win totals for this division?
You can't really factor it in. I mean, it may be an anomaly, it may be a regular occurrence, but you just have to let it fly where it may go. You have to handicap the teams. If you say a team's going to repeat, that's it. What are you going to do?
All right, let's start with the defending champs, the Dallas Cowboys. And we're looking at the season win total of 9 over $1.24. The Cowboys in the draft didn't have a first-round pick, but that's because their first-round pick came last year at the trade deadline when they got the wide receiver Cooper. They also added in free agency. Tavon Austin re-signed. Randall Cobb signed a one-year deal. Yeah, I would just say to you, the one thing here, I don't see any tall receivers. Cooper certainly helped the cause, but that was one of their big problems last year, was moving it up and down the field and getting it in the red zone. That's my personal take on it. But what do you make of this Cowboys team?
This Cowboys team should be very similar to last year. The regular season wins, I believe, are, as you said, 9 over a quarter, over 30, whatever it is right now. They won 10 last year. I think 9's a reasonable number. I think they overachieved a little last year. As you point out, when they got Cooper, they took off a little. They were a little disappointing in the playoffs. They didn't put up they put up a good showing in the first half against the Rams, but then they fell apart. I think 9's a good number. I really wouldn't know what to do with it. If I had to, I'd go over.
You know, Jack, I mean, this is, quote unquote, they say this, America's team. But the one thing about them, I think they're so polarizing. I think people either love the Cowboys or hate the Cowboys, which generally speaking says, oh, that's great for two-way action. Or is there a faction out there that outweighs the other?
It's great for two-way. It's great for two-way action, much like the Yankees in their prime. It's good for TV ratings. People tune in to root for the Cowboys or against the Cowboys. Yeah, that's why they're always in the featured games on whether it be Monday night, Sunday night games. They're there. They generate a response, and I think it's always good for handle when you have a team that everybody has an opinion on.
You know, you brought up a great point. I mean, this is a team that always is on primetime television. They're on Thanksgiving Day, so the big stage is something that's never foreign to them, but it always seems to be a marquee game of some sort that generates huge handle.
Right. And whether you factor in whether it's Dallas or whether it's the time slot they're put in, either way, it works out that way.
All right, let's go to Philadelphia. 9.5 over $1.48. That is the season win total up at Bookmaker.eu. The Eagles win the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. And believe me, they had a big shot to do it again last year, but all of a sudden now all the eggs are in the Carson Wentz basket, and he better stay healthy.
Carson Wentz had the great start 2 years ago when they won the Super Bowl, but Foles had to take them to the promised land. Last year, they were actually struggling when Foles took over. Wentz went down again with injury. Again, I agree, and I think their staff does and everybody else does. Wentz is a better quarterback than Foles, but Foles seems to generate the best results. Almost pulling out that last one, the last game they lost when they fumbled going down against, who was it, Chicago they went out against? Yep. All right. So, I mean, they could have won that game too. They'll miss Foles. They'll miss Foles as the backup plan. I'd have to go under the 9.5.
Well, and that is, and they may be the definition of this, that generally speaking, you hang a number and you want to get two-way action with the professional money and public money. The professionals are going to play the under here, right? I mean, the professionals are going to be looking at injuries can be a thing, and if Wentz goes down, the real value's on the under.
I think we can agree that basically your smart bettors, your professional bettors, they're going to go under the high numbers and over the low.
And you look at this Eagles team, they picked up Jordan Howard, the running back from the Bears. Nice addition, but that's not, from an odds maker's perspective, you pay attention to all this stuff, but that's not going to make a hill of beans bit of difference to you, is it? I mean, last year they were running back by committee. I mean, they had 4 guys they were rotating in and out. Not
one scintilla. It won't change the opinion at all.
All right, the Redskins, 6.5 over $1.16 at bookmaker.eu. They get Haskins, the quarterback. Smith with the Grizzly injury last year. The one thing with Washington, they actually, to their credit, did quite well on draft day, but how that translates, and they got Case Keenum in free agency. So you may very well see Case Keenum start the season. That seems to be, I would think, the safe assumption. Let the veteran play, let Haskins learn the rope, but I think it's probably also a safe assumption. You're getting a quarterback at the number 15 spot. At some point, we're probably going to see Haskins, but the question is when. So how did that impact you making a number of 6.5?
It makes it more difficult because, as you just laid it out, we assume that Keenum will start the season. What game Haskins is going to come in, who knows? It will be like Baltimore last year, where they brought in the kid from Louisville pretty early on, and he managed to make them win. The Baltimore was his type of team, a gritty team, relying on the run, relying on defense, and so on. But now with Washington, 6.5, Keenum is never put in a spot where he has the position himself. When he had it one time in Denver last year, it didn't pan out. When he had it in some other cities, he's had the one good year with Minnesota. So 6.5, if I had to, I would go under 6.5.
Let's go to the Giants, and this would be a very curious one for me. 6 under $1.30 is the number. Generally speaking, free agency and even the draft, and then future odds, you don't get a bunch of movement as a reaction. But all of a sudden, the Giants take Daniel Jones. They're getting Pitchfork, the quarterback out of Duke. People are wondering, what is the direction? What is Gettleman doing here? And they literally got lambasted for what they did in the draft. Was there any kind of movement following the draft, Jack, in that the perception is the Giants seem to be a disorganized mess? Was there any reaction to the draft?
Yes, I believe the general consensus was we were going to put it around 7 wins. And just their dismal performance on draft day, the uncertainty of quarterback, it had to go down. Now, can they go 6-10? Sure, they have the talent to go 6-10. So that's where we placed it. If they'd kept with Manning at quarterback, I think this number would have been 7.
And a final thing for you here in the NFC East, and maybe I would generally ask you this for every division preview we do, but when you look at the division, that's a big part. And then, who does the division play out of conference and what the schedule looks like. But generally speaking, in divisions, there's that penchant for teams cannibalizing one another. Was there any train of thought in terms of the quality of all the teams in the division when it comes to putting a number up for all these teams, and did it impact one team more than any other?
I would say the team we just discussed, it impacted the Giants more than anybody in the NFC East. And the rest of the divisions, I think it's pretty well equal.
All right, folks, there you have it. And it's the NFC East preview. Always great information from our good friend Jack at bookmaker.eu. Good stuff, Jack. We got a long way to go, but thanks for your work there on the NFC East.
My pleasure.
And don't forget, you can follow us on social media. And if you like what you're hearing so far, you can subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast service, iTunes, Libsyn, SoundCloud, and others. and find all of our episodes on our website. Sign up for our newsletter at betmaker.com. We'll be right back with Bruce Marshall from the Gold Sheet.
For outstanding information and special offerings and promotions, we invite you and encourage you to sign up for our newsletter today simply by going to the website at betmaker.com.
All right, folks, we're diving right back in here at the Betmaker.com Sportsbook Report, our preview of the NFC East. Brian Blessing in Las Vegas, and absolutely thrilled to call on one of the best in the business. That's our good friend, Bruce Marshall. He's the brains behind the legendary Las Vegas publication, The Gold Sheet. Hello, Bruce. How you doing today?
Hey, pretty good, Brian. We're getting to the point we're starting to talk football again here, so that's always good.
And we're post-free agency, post-NFL draft, so now you know what we're kind of dealing with here in the NFC East. Let's start with the Cowboys, that season win total of 9 over $1.24. The one thing we've got to mention, Bruce, the sample size is growing. There has not been a repeat winner of the NFC East going all the way back to 2004. What does that mean to the Cowboys?
Yeah, well, their last year was better than 2017 for Dallas. So that was good. They could have probably done better, although they'll take the playoff berth in the NFC East for sure. I think there's a possibility the division might be collapsing around them a little bit, depending upon what's going on with Philadelphia. We'll get to the Eagles in a moment. But I think Jerry Jones is probably feeling pretty good entering this season. They're going to want to decide something, and I think they will opt to make contract-wise with Dak Prescott to lock him in a little bit longer here. He's coming up on the end of his rookie deal. But I think what we saw down the stretch last year from the Cowboys, especially on offense and especially after they got Amari Cooper from the Raiders, Jerry Jones would tell you flat out that was definitely worth the draft picks, including the number one they just sent to the Raiders. And it was a different Cowboy offense down the stretch. So good chance I think they can come back and win the NFC East again here. I think they've got fewer questions than other teams in the division. And, Dak should be another year under his belt. And I think they're about ready to commit to him a longer term. I think if there are any questions here, it might be some depth at the receiver spots, which might be an issue if Cooper or Michael Gallup gets hurt. But I think not just the arrival of Cooper, but the emergence of Gallup helped out last year considerably on the offensive side. And of course, if that takes some pressure off of Zeke too, that's good. I think they're feeling good in Dallas, Brian. And my gut feel is they might be able to exceed this 9 wins and get to double digits this year.
Real quick, is this fair? Prescott, once he signs the deal, is he truly the answer? We've had a few years to see him work now. Then you'll get the weight of expectations. My criticism of Dallas, and it ended up being spot on last year at the outset of the season, was they'll move the ball up and down the field between the 20s, but they won't be able to get it in the red zone because they had diminutive wide receivers. Then Cooper showed up, and it was a different offense. My question is, now that Cooper's there and there's tape on him, might Dallas, if it's not Ezekiel Elliott, pounding the rock into the end zone, is that not still a concern if teams figure a way to take Cooper away?
Yeah, it would, because you're right. That was a problem before he got there. But you've got to figure, too, with a threat like Cooper and a threat like Zeke, they can also score from longer range than most teams. So I think it should balance out. But I think it would really come into play, Brian, if Cooper gets hurt, and then those fears would resurface again. But I think Jerry will take his chances on offense with what he's got. And Jason Garrett, too. By the way, there's a coach with 9 lives, and he's done a lot to survive. I think he'll survive again, and I think Dallas is likely to win the East again. All
right, let's move on to Philadelphia, and I think you're right. They're the main danger here. Actually, they're the favorite at 9.5 over $1.48 in the NFC East. And it's going to be the Carson Wentz show again. Coming back from injury, it seemed like there were a lot of highs and a lot of lows last year, and they don't have the Nick Foles security blanket. They pick up Jordan Howard, the running back. Deshaun Jackson comes back. The Howard thing looks nice on paper, but we watch them. It's a running back by committee deal anyway. It really revolves around what Carson Wentz brings to the table, and he better stay healthy.
Yeah, and that's been a problem certainly the last couple of years for him, and a couple of serious injuries. And we've discussed things with Philadelphia people in the offseason. I'm not sure I agree with everybody there who believes it was a slam dunk deal to let Nick Foles go and keep Wentz around. Listen, unless Wentz wins a Super Bowl there, and that's a pretty high bar to clear, I'm not sure, that he's a better option than Foles. Foles made this team click. He seemed to get the team punching above its weight. And my golly, if you win a Super Bowl like he did 2 years ago, like I said, that's a pretty high bar to clear. There are also some other issues there with Wentz that I think have to be addressed as well. So we're going to have to see how the Eagles deal with all that stuff going forward. Not quite all the feel good this offseason because of all these things. Howie Roseman, the GM, has proven a pretty smooth operator. We talked about bringing Jackson back, also another Jackson, Malik Jackson, a defensive lineman from Jacksonville, has a Super Bowl ring with Denver. I think he's going to help quite a bit, and he'll help the defensive front, Jordan Howard, as you mentioned as well. So the Eagles are the main threat in this division, but the big question about Wentz is one we'll just have to see how this develops as the season wears on. And if he can stay healthy, that would probably put the Eagles back in the playoffs. But if he can't, they don't have that security blanket behind Foles. And is Nate Sudfeld really the backup that they need, Coach Peterson and Howie Roseman? I'm not sure.
Move on to Washington with a season win total of 6.5. And hey, listen, give credit where credit was due. When I heard that Daniel Snyder was taking over the first round of the draft, if you'd have told me that they got Dwayne Haskins and they got Montez Sweat, I'd say that'd be all well and good, but he probably gave up 3 future first-round picks to do it, and he was able to get the quarterback and get Sweat, and it's a job well done in the first round for the Skins. Big question's going to be, though, are we looking at Keenum as the opening day starter, and when do you believe Haskins is going to get the call?
This is a very good question, and a lot of moving pieces there at the FedEx Field, Brian. They've also still got Colt McCoy on the roster here, too, though I think adding Keenum suggests to me that's the way they're going to go short term. Alex Smith is still going to be out for this year, it looks like. He might come back in 2020. They'll worry about that then. So I think McCoy is probably likely to be released. They will go with Keenum at the start, and I think Keenum's a pretty good short-term alternative for them. And then we look to Haskins down the road at some point, but I don't think he figures into the equation in 2019. If he does, then this season has gone pear-shaped, like we like to say, for the Redskins. So I think it's going to be Keenum. Also, let's not forget Darius Geis, who got hurt in the first preseason game last year, the star running back from LSU. He should be available this year, too. That should perk up the offense a bit. Montez Sweat's situation, very interesting. If a medical condition supposedly dropped him out of a primo pick in the first round, then he still gets picked in the first round by the Redskins. So somebody either missed out there, or the Redskins got a big bonus. This guy was projected as a top 5 pick in most pre-draft prognostications. One note here, Jay Gruden, I thought, did a very good job getting this team as far as it did and into the playoff race last December with an egregious amount of injuries. Now, that's the question here, and the injuries also hit at the quarterback spot last year. They get a little healthier this year, and if Keenum can hold the fort, I think this team actually stays in the wild card race again until December and is likely over that 6.5 wins, especially because Keenum can give them at least some stability at quarterback, which they certainly didn't have after midseason last year.
We wrap it up with the Giants, 6 under $1.30, and you talk about taking some heat in New York. That comes with the territory. Gettleman, the GM, indeed took a lot of hit, and we're talking about an entirely new look here. First, there was the Beckham trade. Jabril Peppers and the guard Zeitler come over. Golden Tate is signed there. But now we're dealing with, Eli Manning, and then he goes to Daniel Jones, the Duke quarterback at number 6, which he took a lot of heat for. The Giants, they've got Barkley, who was so massively misused last year, and the kid was incredible. If they can establish the running game, but the play calling was an atrocity last year, I think they're in a lot of games. But the thing is, Bruce, you got Eli Manning, and I don't know, is he looking over his shoulder at Daniel Jones? When does the heat kick in that the number 6 overall pick of the draft gets in? I mean, you're not in the business of surviving to take a franchise quarterback and have him sitting around doing nothing on the bench?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of questions everywhere. I mean, even Hoda and Al Roker don't know what's going on at MetLife Stadium with the Giants, Brian. This has been a curious offseason, to say the least. I mean, they didn't get nothing, like you said, in the OBJ trade. I mean, if you can bring Jabril Peppers back and you bring Zeitler, those are two starters they're going to get out of that deal. We keep hearing the offense is going to pivot more around Saquon Barkley in Pat Shurmur's second year in charge. I don't think he has another option here, Brian, and that's because Eli is well beyond his sell-by date. I mean, his good efforts are fewer and further between. They had to make a move at quarterback in the offseason here. They decided to do it in the draft. They decided to go with Dave Brown. I'm sorry, Dave Brown. I'm going back a few years. It's Daniel Jones. Dave Brown, the last guy from Duke who came out, didn't fare all that well. But Jones, some question about pushing him up that high. And I think, this is another scenario like Haskins with the Redskins. If they've got to go to Jones at some point this year, the season's not going that well. But without, Beckham, this is going to be a different looking offense right there. And at the moment, you have to assume Eli's still going to be in the pilot's chair, and that does not inspire a lot of confidence in me. 6 could be about their high water mark this year. They'd be very disappointed if they don't exceed that with the Giants. But personally, Brian, I don't think they have enough defense to get over the hump with Eli at quarterback. And if it's still Eli, I have lost all confidence in him. So I am not very bullish on the Giants.
All right, Bruce, as an overview to wrap it up, I think the one thing with every division we should take into account is who do they play on their schedule other than division foes. The NFC East this year draws the AFC East, which means you've got a date with the Patriots. But there will be opportunities for this group when they go against the Bills, Dolphins, and Jets. Yes, and I think that's a trade that most of these teams of the NFC don't mind going through the East. If the Patriots are going to be the one game they might have trouble with, but the other 3 have their questions. So I think that probably works out pretty well. More than any division, I mean, injuries will mean a lot here, and especially when you talk about the Eagles, I think Wentz is the pivotal player in this whole division. If they get a full season out of him, he stays healthy, the Eagles will threaten and probably get back to the playoffs. If they don't, I think they fall short this year because they don't have that safety blanket in Foles, and so I think he's the pivot player in this division. As always, Bruce Marshall, a fountain of information, helping us out on the NFC East. Thank you, Bruce. Appreciate it. Okay, Brian. Outstanding stuff from Bruce Marshall from the Gold Sheet. Our good friend Jack, the head odds maker down at bookmaker.eu. There is your preview of the NFC East. We hope you enjoyed the podcast. Want you to follow us on social media and subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast service, iTunes, Libsyn, SoundCloud, and others. And, of course, you can find all the episodes on the website. Sign up for the newsletter at betmaker.com. Hope you enjoyed the preview of the NFC East right here at betmaker.com.
Betmaker, let's make some money tonight.
Well, that's the Betmaker Show for now. We publish multiple times each week. We'd like to thank you for listening, and if you liked what you heard, please take a moment to leave a rating and review, or subscribe to our show feed, or share our show with a friend or two and help us grow the show. We very much appreciate it. Visit us on the web at betmaker.com. And reminder to sign up for the newsletter. Thanks to our engineer, Darren Vandermolen, and producer, Mike Gallivan. The Betmaker Show is a production of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated. Betmaker is a registered trademark. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this content without the express written consent of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated is strictly prohibited.
The handicapping and sports odds information contained on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Please confirm the wagering regulations in your jurisdiction, as they vary from state to state, province to province, and country to country. Using this information to contravene any law or statute is prohibited. The podcast is not associated with, nor is it endorsed by any professional or collegiate league, association, or team. This podcast does not target and is not intended for an audience under the age of 18. If you think that you have a gambling addiction, stop this podcast now and please seek help.
Gambling and betting on sports is a form of entertainment and should be about having a good time. But when done excessively, it may negatively affect other areas of a person's life, such as their physical and mental health, school or work performance, finances, and or interpersonal relationships. At Betmaker.com and the Betmaker Show, we're concerned about the addiction that gambling may cause, and for this reason, we encourage everyone to practice responsible gambling, an approach to gambling that helps you ensure that it remains an enjoyable activity. Here are the main principles of responsible gambling. Don't think of gambling as a way to make money. Always gamble with money that you can afford to lose. Set limits and stick to them. Never chase losses. Don't gamble when you're depressed or upset, and create a healthy balance. Always be aware of how much time you spend gambling or thinking about gambling. And do not allow gambling to cause you to miss out on time with family and friends or time spent on other activities you enjoy. By following these guidelines, gambling can be a good time and great entertainment. If you feel at any time that your gambling is taking away from important areas of your life, is causing you stress or depression, or is leading to financial losses that are beyond your control, please reach out for help. Learn more at responsiblegambling.org.